Thank you for joining us. Here we are, week 5 of WandaVision is in the books, and we have a lot to unpack. We're very excited about this episode. I'm Peel.
And I'm Travis, and this is the Travis and Peel Show.
Travis, my friend, week 5, WandaVision. It was magnifique.
Chef's kiss, my friend.
Good.
Very good.
So, first off, first reactions, obviously. Great episode. A lot of things unfolded. Like we predicted last week, we had a little bit of the comedy. We had of the like sitcom type series, and then we had a little bit of the real world. So we had a nice little interchangeable connection, and it was a great episode. Nice little bit of intrigue. Of course, a few more questions come out, and we're kind of left wondering. And then obviously a couple of the things kind of unfold. A lot of magic in between. Once again, like every week, we're getting gold here. So I was super happy with the episode and can't wait to start breaking it down.
Yeah. For me, my spoiler-free look into it. I love the episode. It was fantastic. I have zero gripes. This is my favorite episode of the bunch, and I think I've said that after each subsequent episode that we've received, and via text message we spoke about this, and I'm like, that's a sign of a great show. When every episode is your new favorite episode, sign of a great show that this show knows how to escalate. They know how to, this show was getting criticisms after the first couple of episodes because it was all sitcom.
Oh, definitely.
And this show,
all you doubters out there,
it's the purest example of how a TV show can be a slow burn, and how this needs to be a slow burn. And this even makes me, earlier on in our earlier WandaVision episodes, I was like, I just want to binge it. And I couldn't have been more wrong. There is...
Say that one more time.
I couldn't have been more wrong. You cannot binge.
And who was right?
I'm not saying you were right. I'm just saying that you. So no,
you were not wrong.
There is a boon. There is totally a boon to watching this show week to week because they scatter out all of these. You get the big questions in the beginning and the breadcrumb trail that they're just sprinkling, that we're just following week to week. That is, they're nailing it. And we spoke on the phone earlier tonight too about this episode, and it could be a topic for another day, but this show is so good, it actually has me worried for how good like the other Marvel shows could be, like Winter Soldier and the Falcon and things like that. Like, it makes me generally concerned. Like, could those shows be possibly as good? Like, could Hawkeye be as good as this show is? Like, it's
another
almost
episode.
too good.
Yes, that is a very deep discussion that we can get into, because it's like, is this just the tip of the iceberg? Is this just the first taste of what we're about to get?
Yeah.
Or did they prematurely blow their load on magic on the very first thing we're
let's
getting?
Let's finish
in,
WandaVision. Let's table that discussion for another day, like a month from now when WandaVision's over, because we never know. WandaVision could lay a stinker at the very end and be like, that was terrible. what a terrible ending to a show. Like, we don't know. I highly doubt that. But let's jump into spoilers. Let's kind of get our recap going, because there's a lot to piece through. There's a lot to love. My friend, take it away.
All right, great. Yeah. As we join into this episode, we jump right in. It's the whole entire, like, babies are crying, nothing will work, everybody needs the binkies, and then you see Wanda even trying to bribe them into being quiet, so that way you'll be my favorite twin. Just joking, obviously. But yeah, bring into this nice family setting. It looks is the typical 80s type show. I mean, they're in the clothes, the hair, the whole entire look and decor of the house. And it goes right into, Wanda has both the kids there. She tries to put them to sleep using her magic. And it's kind of weird, though, because her magic's not working on them. And she tries a few times. And of course, Agnes shows up in her usual Agnes fashion. And we have this really weird scene that pops in, because Agnes is like going in to touch the kids, and Vision, typical dad, have you washed your hands? When was the last time you did this? When was the last time you did that? And he just stops her from grabbing the kids. And then, Agnes is shocked. She's like brought back. She's like, well, what do you mean? And she looks over at Wanda. She's like, oh, you want me to take that from the top? Want me to redo this?
Yeah.
It was really weird.
Such a fourth wall breaking, very akin to someone on stage or a live performance just messing up and having to start over awkwardly on stage. The Agnes stuff is weird, man. Like, it's like one, Catherine Hahn killed it. Like, she nailed it. But like, Agnes as a character, there's something definitely going on there, as we all know. It doesn't seem, though, this episode and the previous episode where she was kind of, centered on a little bit, like, it just seems that she has something to do with this, but she's definitely not in control as we originally thought that she did. Like, she has some control, but there's this world, this pocket reality is doing something to her too, for sure. And then we know that there's a scene in trailers.
As we see with everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Like, some people more than others. Like, the residents are completely... Are completely held to they're slaves, like
subservient.
Yeah, for sure. Like, they are a part of the script and they can't do anything about it. But Agnes, like, I was actually shocked to see that she's kind of like not like completely on the same page with what's happening with this world, and it's makes it all more interesting.
Yeah, there's a little something amiss. Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
And in the scene, they have that weird back and forth between Vision and Agnes, and then her questioning Wanda, and they back it up, and they start laughing it off, and then Agnes starts working with the kids with the buns of steel, and she's going around the house doing things. And something I noticed also, if you go back to the first episode and going through, Agnes drinks in every episode. She's always drinking. I don't know if that means anything or, put a pin in that, but I realized that she drinks in every episode.
Interesting.
So anyways, Vision's kind of talking to Wanda, asking her, hey, what was that back and forth? She's like, what are you talking about? And just completely, gaslighting this, nothing's wrong. You're just, imagining things. Don't worry about it. So it's this really weird thing that we see happening all the time. But Vision, like we've mentioned before, is becoming more cognitive and questioning more of what's happening. So it's really, interesting to see how that's going to come up. And we saw more of that later on in this episode. But, of course, the kids stop crying. They're like, what's that sound? Complete silence. Turn over. Kids aren't there. Next thing they turn around, the kids are 5 years old. Went from little babies, 5 years old. And then boom, intro kicks in, which is a nice little family ties.
It was
growing pains
so
type
good.
Intro.
Yeah, like to give them total credit about. I mean, this is like, we didn't grow up in the 50s and 60s and everything. We've seen the shows, so we know that the MCU and the producers of WandaVision did a really great job of reenacting the spirit, the look and feel of those sitcoms. They did a good job here. I don't think, because there's so much like. The sitcom aspect of the show is now more of a backdrop than it is in the forefront. So like it's kind of hard to adapt because now we're jumping, from outside the pocket to inside the pocket. So it's hard now since we're not getting full episode sitcoms like we previously were getting. It's hard for them to like completely just nail the 80s. So I feel like because of that, not that any fault of their own, it's just that now that there are other stories to tell, they can't really focus on it being like a show, it being a sitcom. Right. What they did, all the sitcom stuff that they did, they nailed the spirit. Like they did that. It just
well, they nailed the intro with this too. Like I said, this was so family ties, like 100%. And then we're making it up as we go along as part of the song. We're just like going over everything. They're showing all the baby pictures,
the growing pains baby pictures, the fucking baby Vision. That was the
little
best.
Baby Vision, little boy Vision. They did a great job. Hats off to them.
Literally laughed out loud. I couldn't control myself. Yeah. That was the funniest shit I've ever seen. It was so good.
Yeah, that was definitely a new classic beast that MCU added in there. I mean, and this whole thing has been an homage. This is Marvel MCU first time coming to the silver screen. And so they're paying this homage to all these things, and they've been nailing it. Like I said, everything has been great, and I love every little piece that they're doing. But back to the story, they're getting back to it now. And after the intro, we get Monica. She's recounting her stuff. She just got out of the bubble. She's kind of seeing everything flashing. She's talking about the hopeless feeling she had, the grief that she felt while she was in there. And this is Darcy and Wu and this nurse, and they're about to go to a meeting with Director Hayward, and the nurse says, "Oh, hey, we have to redo your test." And they're showing her screen, and Darcy's like, "Oh yeah, everything's blank." And it's like, "Oh, well, we'll have to do the test later." But that's what's going on. Why all of her tests blank? You have to do new blood work. You have to do new C scans, all this kind of stuff. Why? why is Monica's stuff now thrown off? So
Mm.
a little something else we're going to put a pin in, because there's so many, options of what's going to happen going forward, and, origin stories, because, in the comics,
We
Monica
know.
Rambeau
Yeah.
is a superhero.
she's photon / spectrum, and this is probably her getting those powers. Most likely, it could be something else. We don't know, but I mean that's kind of what's
how it
going to.
happens or how it relates to her, we're going to find out. So we're not going to speculate too much, because we still don't know the whole entire like mutant situation versus whatever they're going to do in the MCU in this or going forward. We really don't know, but we're interested to find out. They're having this meeting with Hayward. He's talking about here's some classified information. 9 days ago, Wanda breaks in to the Sword compound and gets Vision's body. And we see this footage and everything, and you see Vision's separated into all these different pieces and everything, and Wanda coming in, breaking everything down, and ultimately footage goes away, but she takes Vision and goes to Westview.
Can you imagine what she went through? And I think we're going to see, based on trailers, it seemed like we're going to get more of a firsthand account of what of her going through getting his body. And can you imagine like how terrible that must have been to like bust through there, he's there, and see him be desecrated like that.
Which brings a point that we talked about with this. It's going to be very traumatic for her, very messed up, but he was supposed to be kept there to be locked away safely. And they bring this up, she breaks the Sokovia Accords by taking his body. And his last will and testament was he did not want to be, studied or used as a weapon or be used in that. What was Sword doing with them? Because in that scene, he wasn't being locked
it's Hayward,
away. He
right?
was like full display, and people were working on him.
You mentioned Hayward. Hayward's a turd. Like, I think it's clear.
Yeah, we're seeing it more and more now.
Power hungry turd. He's not happy. He was taken off. He was caught off guard. He's changed Sword while Monica was gone. He's changed Sword to be something completely different. He says that we've changed from space travel and space research and stuff like that to AI and bioorganics and stuff like that. Like not bioorganics, but like cyber organics. And clearly, we know what he was doing. He was fucking like tearing Vision apart piece by piece, and it was just so unnerving for me just to see him in that table like that. I really look forward to seeing like the more cinematic version of that and see what she went through, because that had to have been a really harrowing experience to see the person that you love, who's already dead, to see their body be desecrated like that. And it clearly what's happening with Monica, and we're going to have another scene with her, Vision and his body, and what's happening in the pocket reality versus what we found out about Monica, like all this stuff that's happening now, we're starting to get an idea of like how the reality that Wanda's living in and creating for herself is all coming to fruition. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. Again, a lot of questions, a lot of half answers. But we'll talk about that more.
We are seeing there are other influences, not only in the pocket reality, but outside in the real world that are also coming to light. There's different things that are affecting all sides. There's always a puppet master above what's happening in the forefront. So we're going to find out more, and we're seeing that everybody is not what they appear, So a lot of red herrings going on right here. But as we get into it, after the scene, boom, guess what? Hey, the boy's got a puppy, right? Here we go. Cute little puppy scene. The family's all together. Oh, yeah, it's great. Vision, makes this little quick reference. He's like, yeah, I'm wearing my regular face because I just have this notion that somebody's going to pop in. Cue Catherine Hahn and Agnes walking in with a little dog house. And he says, with something that we exactly need. So on cue, she has the dog house to go through the whole thing, name the dog Sparky. It's adorable. And they say, hey, we don't think you guys should have a dog. You're not responsible enough. And then, of course, boom, kids raised, and they said, you're not going to be responsible till you're 10 years old. 10 years old. Boom, there we go. So in this episode, we saw them go from babies to 5 years old to now they are 10 years old. So yeah, really weird stuff going on once again. And we don't have an answer to why the kids are doing this so rapidly and why everybody just seems to be 100% okay with it. Because even, Wanda mentions in the, to Vision, she's like, oh yeah, Agnes saw them change from babies to 5 and she didn't blink an eye. And this is all kind of getting more in the forefront. It used to be, we want to hide our powers. We want to keep everything away. And now it's just like things are happening in the open. She's creating the dog collar with Agnes standing right there. So it's kind of, everything is slowly unraveling. People are losing their grip on what they're controlling and what they're doing.
Yeah, and all the while, Vision is just he's catching on more. Like Vision is getting to the point where not only is he figuring it out, like he's fully convinced now that there is a problem. and Wanda's not being honest with him, and I'll touch on that too. There's another thing that's making me very, very uneasy about Wanda and her and Vision's relationship. I'll just say it right now. Like she's kind of acting like an abusive spouse. Like there's emotional abuse going on right now. She's constantly gaslighting him, lying to him, and he clearly knows the truth, and she will not tell him the truth, up to the point where she tries to just like completely stop the episode, which we'll get to later. And it's really unnerving that, you know, you love someone so much, but the shades of gray or what's making the show so damn good for me. The shades of gray of like, hey, I love this person. I want to spend my life with him, even though he's dead. So I'm going to take care of myself and do that. But all the while, like, you're clearly hurting this person. You're clearly lying to him and being cruel. And she's not a bad person. We know that. But she's doing something it's kind of over the line of gray, because it is super, super dark. If you were to do this to someone that you loved, it would not be looked well upon. So I
mean, if they're dead, does it really matter anyways?
But she can clearly bring them into reality. She can clearly
we mentioned this before. I mean, she does have his body, so technically his separated pieces and everything are what's being puppeteered throughout this, you know, universe in Westview right now. It is pretty much, you know, Vision's corpse in some kind of way being reanimated. Obviously, this is what we see, but last week we had that little glimpse of what she saw for a second. So that could be when things are slipping, we might start seeing what everything truly is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, let's get into it. The Hex. So Darcy Lewis names, the force field the Hex due to the hexagons, which has been a common theme through everything, which we've mentioned, and they mentioned last week on the episode. So the Hex is definitely a nice thing catching on. It was a little running joke in the episode, but yeah, it caught on by the end. So I definitely liked it. I totally agree with that title. And of course, she's talking about getting something powerful enough to go back into the Hex. And get through to Wanda, because Monica wants to get back in there and find out exactly what's going on. And they said, I think we have some ideas about, what we can do. And of course, on the whiteboard, this is something that, once again, we brought up last week, was Agnes wasn't ID'd or, brought up in it. And she was on the whiteboard in this episode, but no identification, nothing like that. And then I was thinking, we also haven't seen Dottie on any of the pictures or any of the IDs. They went through and showed us every person in who we've seen who's at screen time. They've been up there, and we saw that they got ID'd. We haven't seen Agnes. I mentioned that last week, and I'm realizing it now. I went back and rewatched. We haven't seen Dottie either. So there's another little
Dottie's one of those weird characters where there are some odd questions. She doesn't seem overly important to the story, but there are so many odd questions, and nothing in this show is accidental. There's no way, nothing. So the fact that we have not seen
purpose. Dottie has a deeper part of this.
I mean, the mailman's a similar thing. We've had two throwaway episodes, the two throwaway scenes in two episodes that specifically focus on the mailman, and he has line. He's at this point he is a pointless character, but we've had way too much attention, too much of a spotlight shown on him. In two pointless scenes.
No, man, we're on to you, sir.
We get you. We get you. We know you're reading all of our Westview mail. It's weird. And then there's the whole thing Agent Wu was looking for his missing persons. So there's a question is one of these people a missing person? Is this missing person even really important to the story? We don't know.
It has to be, though. It has to be, because they kept talking about him and they kept saying he. So that's the other thing. So I don't know. We're going to find out more. We don't have those answers yet, but we do have more details. One thing that they also alluded to was Wanda's new insane amount of powers, which we've already talked about. We are Sword. We've discussed this before. We're totally Sword. We are seeing Sword go through everything that everybody else is talking about on the internet. What we're talking about on the show, it is the same thing. They're literally watching this show just like we are, asking the same things, having the same discussions.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, her powers are definitely way beyond what her normal powers are. And so this is something that's going to come up, just in a few minutes too, towards the end of the episode.
Yeah, and is this the conversation too where they discuss like what Monica was wearing, like her clothes that she came out with and everything?
Yeah, this is the same part. Yeah, they start talking about the battle with Thanos and everything, and you know, Wanda could have taken him out by herself. So they called in the Blitz, and then who says, oh, yeah, well, Captain Marvel, could have done it too and didn't do a bad job. And Monica seemed really mad when he brought up Captain Marvel, and she even says, we don't talk about her.
Yeah,
so it was kind of weird. Is there a little grudge happening?
There's a lot to unpack there
into the future.
In Captain Marvel too. I think we'll unpack that for sure.
Which we'll get that. Yeah.
Again, MCU's so good at just setting missing gap. MCU planting those seeds, man, for future. Like this movie's not going to come out for another 2 or 3 years, but the seed is planted for what's going to happen between Monica and Captain Marvel.
And that's what's been the genius behind this, man.
So
once
good.
Again,
so good.
Magnifique.
I love it.
Yeah. So they talked about that, and then she remembers, hey, where are my clothes? I got an idea. Goes to her clothes, and this is something that you kind of alluded to, and they discuss it, and we discuss it, and here we go. Her clothes are like 80% Kevlar because that's what she wore going in, and Wanda was able to augment the reality of what it was. It wasn't you saw this is what it was. Actually changed the fabric of reality.
So originally we thought
clothes are bulletproof.
Originally we thought, we're like, hey, so clearly when Monica shot out, she was wearing her 70s clothes, so you can actually take things out of the pocket reality. When in fact, what you're wearing inside the pocket reality is actually something that you walked in with. Like you walked in with something like, for instance, she had Kevlar on, and even though she had a couple of different outfits from the 60s and the 70s, those were made of bulletproof Kevlar. It was just warped version of what she was already wearing. I also think that means that you can also warp items and things that you have there, maybe even including a dead corpse of an android, and that's why we have Vision alive. Like it's a distorted version of his dead body. I mean, it makes sense because she saw Vision for a second and he was zombified and hole in his head and stuff like that. So to me, it's almost kind of too clear that that's what's going on. And then the kids are also a manifested entity. But that definitely gets into
reality.
That definitely gets into a conversation about the possibility of Mephisto coming in, because if they follow the comics,
mentioned it. Yep.
If they follow the comics, the two pieces of Mephisto's soul essentially making the kids Horcruxes, like in Harry Potter, and that's what's manifest. That's the item that's outside of the pocket that's brought in, that's manifested into those children, and I think those children, for the children, it's all connected. Like those kids are important. They're really, really, really important. Yeah, this show's really good, man.
Yeah,
it's too good.
The next scene, which is not Wanda, but Wanda's not working. She's a housewife. That was just a joke. Okay, so Vision is at work at the computational.
That's how it was in the 80s, man. That's what it was. That's
Yeah, I'm just stating facts. I'm not giving any kind of my own input. But so anyways, Vision is at his work, and they're having the scene, setting up these old-timey computers and everything, and he's talking to Norm, and they get an email. And of course, they make some funny jokes about it. But the email is from Darcy Lewis, or Dr. Darcy Lewis. Sorry, got to put some respect on the name. And it's, saying, hey, there's something going wrong with the Maximoff anomaly. There's high levels of radiation. We don't know what's generating it. Everybody laughs it off. And Vision is obviously like, what in the world is this? And he does little vision things and then touches Norm, and Norm snaps out of it, and he is freaking out. He's like, where's my family? What is going on? He's like, everything hurts. It hurts so bad. I'm so scared. Make her stop it. Make her stop. Make her stop. She did this. Now, I want to point out here, just because terrible idea, he does say all these things, which makes us automatically think that it's Wanda. Never says her name.
He just says she, right? Yeah.
I think, once again, everything's intentional. Everything's intentional in this show and in the MCU. So I think that's going to be really deeper, that it might not be Wanda.
Yeah, I don't think he's discussing Wanda. It clearly points towards Wanda as the culprit, but I think that's the red herring, right? I mean, it could be Agnes.
Like I said, all over the place.
There could be credence to your Dottie theory.
Could be Dottie.
It could be. It could be. I never thought about the Dottie thing before tonight, and I got to tell you, you got my head spinning about that. It's interesting.
Man, there's so many things. Like I said, that's what's so great about this show, man. Like I love it where I'm sitting here just like coming up with all these crazy conspiracy theories, and then you go online and there's other like 15 things I haven't even thought of, and I was like, oh, well, and there's people like saying, look at the wallpaper, you see the devil's face in it. But those are also the same kind of people who see like, Jesus's face in burnt toast. So we'll just way off on that and wait to see what happens. But we'll spin a little bit of our own theories, but don't go down that rabbit hole. Next scene, you know what? They're looking for the dog. The dog went missing. It's the boys and Wanda running around the neighborhood, and guess what happens?
Dog's gone.
Dog's dead.
Dog's dead, man.
Dog's dead.
Totally
Agnes,
not killed.
Agnes has him. She found him.
Totally not killed by Agnes. 100%. She did not murder a puppy.
100%.
Yeah.
No, that's totally uncharacteristic for her. Some azalea leaves. How many? We don't know, but too many for that.
Because we all know those azalea leaves, man. They'll drop dead. You're done.
It actually might. I'm not sure. We should probably Google that.
Should probably WebMD it or something.
But don't let your dog eat any leaves. Now I'm just concerned. But anyways, so they start talking. Mom, bring her back. You have the power. Bring him back from the dead. And this is a little bit of foreshadowing that's going to come up later on, where they're saying you can't bring things back from the dead. You can't do that. It's not right. And the boys are about to like change their age again. She's like, no, don't do it. You can't run from it. You can't change your age. Sometimes you just have to feel it. You have to go through it, which is also kind of alluding to her and what she's not doing, which is dealing with the thing that's going on. And then once again, the boys say, bring him back from the dead. And then Vision walks in right on cue and bring who back from the dead? What are y'all talking about? And that's not even the foreshadowing that I'm talking about. So
right.
There's so many layers to it. So we skipped the whole scene though with the drone coming in. And there's the whole, AV's drone that came in. Wanda takes it out of the sky, which is really crazy what happens here because, Monica Rambeau's the one that flies it in and she's trying to communicate with Wanda. And Wanda's showing some acts of aggression and her eyes are glowing. She doesn't look too happy about it. And then Sword, Hayward right there cuts off control from Monica and they say, hey, take the shot, take her out. They armed this drone that Monica was using just to communicate, tried to do something with Wanda. She automatically stops it. And the next thing we see, she rips through the hex coming through with that droid in her hand and throws it down at their feet in full in-game regalia. All right. She's still full suit and everything.
She has her accents back. Like she's full Scarlet Witch at this point. And it was a great tense scene, man. Like it.
Oh yeah.
And it goes to show.
And ultimatums.
And it goes to show like she just wants to be left alone because in her eyes, she just wants to be left alone, live her life with Vision. But when you look at it through the eyes of Sword and the FBI, she is a true villain in that scene. In that scene, she is a true villain, and we know that she's not. But like the shades of gray that are happening here, and what's making the show so brilliant is the fact that she is so forceful on her point. At the same time, controlling where guns are being pointed and stuff like that. She's a clear and present danger.
This is your only warning. I will not warn you again.
Yeah.
And then boom, once again, snaps her fingers. Every one of the soldiers turn around, aims it on Hayward, and that's a nice little diversion while she goes and walks back to the hex and seems to rip it open and spread more power throughout it because the whole color of it changes as she re-enters the pocket reality, which is kind of a weird thing that I know you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, so it's clear that the pocket reality is kind of controlled by some sort of or created by some sort of other entity because these are clearly not in Wanda's power set, which we touched on earlier, and she is in a situation where she's living in this pocket reality that's created by something else. And we know that because when she walks in and she kind of covers the pocket reality in more of a red aura, and that's clearly in her power set. So she kind of controls it within, she protects the pocket reality with another layer of her powers and stuff like that. So it's kind of just more evidence that we have not even come close to the genesis of this. We know that Wanda's involved.
There's so much more going on.
We know that Wanda
we know this.
Has a semblance of control, but there is a puppet master, clearly a puppet master within this. And man, that scene was great.
Hey, Travis, have you ever made a mess that you didn't mean to?
Many times.
Clean it up. Logos, paper towels.
Hey,
this is a funny commercial, man.
I like this commercial.
Great. You see it get, the Kool-Aid gets spilled, which is this red liquid, just reminds you of blood, and they're cleaning it up. And the tagline is, "Make a mess that you didn't mean to, Lagos, which is of course the area where Wanda was trying to make the explosion go up and away from everybody, and then blew out half the building, in Nigeria. And so this is just a little funny. Well, not funny. I guess it's kind of tragic in the most part, but blood on her hands,
Right.
and make a mess that you didn't mean to. So once again, the commercials have a nice little layer of what happened previously in Wanda's existence in the MCU.
Same actor and actress that's in every single commercial as well. So the general consensus
Second
online,
commercial with kids.
Yeah. The general consensus online is that those are her parents, her and Pietro's parents.
Right.
Which in the comics, like comic purists will kind of have a complaint about that because no, their dad is Magneto. I honestly don't know how they would do Magneto as being their dad, because like what makes Magneto is that he was a Holocaust survivor and stuff like that. So if that's the case, Magneto would be like over 100 years, like 80 something years old. He's too old to be Magneto at that point. So they may retcon Magneto a little bit and make Magneto like their grandfather versus their actual father, which I think I would be okay.
Yeah, I can deal with that.
I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that change. It's just that the time doesn't make sense for him to be their direct father. It just doesn't make sense. So I do think that I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into Magneto because
like I said, we can't get down the rabbit holes. You gotta keep moving
way
forward.
too deep.
So we keep moving forward. Okay, we got the commercial. We got the scene with the dog. You can't be afraid. You got to keep moving forward. Families forever. So once again, that's the theme that they keep talking about. Families forever during this. Next thing we know, they're back in the house. They're cleaning up the table. Vision approaches Wanda and he's like, "Hey, I had a conversation with Norm without your oversight, and he's afraid, he's scared. What the F is going on?" And she once again tries to blow it off. Don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, "Listen, you can't control me like you control them." And then she looks at him and says, "Can't I?" And then starts walking away. End credits. Scene
ends
done.
the episode. Like she ends the episode. So good.
Vision's not having it. They keep arguing, and this leads into a very tense scene that goes right into the living room. I mean, Vision is like, "Stop lying to me," and he flies in the air. And she backs back up. She's like, "I'm not. I'm protecting you." And it gets really intense with them just sitting there floating in the middle of the living room, just trying to battle each other. She's trying to look after him, protect him. He just wants to know the truth. And then they just have this huge argument about, what are you doing? There's so much more that you're not discussing with me. And she's just like, just trust me. I have it under control. Calms them down. Families forever. You're their dad. I'm their mom. We love each other. This is where we need to be. And he's like, "You're avoiding all the questions that I'm asking." And she's like, "I'm not." And then ding dong. Oh, doorbell. She's like, "I did not do that." And they have the conversation before she answers the door that I don't know what's happening 50% of the time. And she really does genuinely seem confused right here.
Huge comment right
because she's like, "Do you think that I'm really making everybody get their dentist appointments, walking their dogs, going to work, going to school, getting all this other kind of stuff?" And even mentions there are no other kids anywhere. And it is kind of weird that, he talks about the park's always empty. Of course, we already knew about the for the kids. And then, them forcing the kids. So it's this whole thing with them being the only two children in this entire pocket reality. Vision asking all these questions. And then, of course, Wanda being very confused and even saying herself that she doesn't know. And we've mentioned this several times, that the confusion that we see on her, that's why we know there's deeper things, darker secrets that are happening. And there's a different puppet master or puppet masters that are at work here.
Indeed.
But yeah, the doorbell rang. And who's at the door? None other than Pietro. Or Evan Peters, who is the Quicksilver from the Fox X-Men movies. And then here he is as Pietro in WandaVision in the MCU now. And it's really funny because you see Darcy and she walks in and watches this happening. And she's like, "Did she just recast her brother?"
The best line in the entire episode for sure was that. Like, such a meta. Again, Sword being the Sword in the FBI being the proxy for the audience and stuff like that. Like, this was a huge drop. I think Evan Peters coming in is going to have huge implications. Whether or not this is an official gap of the MCU and the Fox properties coming together, I don't necessarily think that is this. This is a different Pietro. Like, even though it looks like Evan Peters, it looks like the Fox Quicksilver. He's got
heavy New Jersey accent when he walks in the door. Hey, gonna give my sister a hug. Hey.
Yeah. Forget about it. Like, this guy right here is not the Pietro that we know. I even went back and looked at his scenes from the previous X-Men movies, and he does not sound like this whatsoever. So yeah, this is definitely a different manifestation. And when she hugs him, she's confused. She's just as confused as we are. So it gives credence to what she's saying.
Confused. And she's
like, go ahead.
Oh, no, the other thing, I was agreeing with you. Yeah, 100%. She's confused. She's looking back and she's like, I have no idea like who you are. And she questions Pietro, little affliction at the end. That's a question mark right there.
Yeah, for sure. So there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff
now,
there.
Did
especially
she recast him or did somebody else?
She wouldn't have been as confused. This is an outside interference. This is way definitely outside interference, for sure.
Yeah, and then that's right where the episode ends, just leaving us right there. We have Quicksilver now inside the MCU, or Pietro, because I don't know, since you kind of alluded to this before when they had it earlier in the scene where he's like, oh, does Wanda not have any weird nicknames or, funny titles? And they're like, no, of course, we all know Scarlet Witch. But during this time, when the movies originally came out, it was still a Fox. So they couldn't have called her Scarlet Witch, and they just went with Wanda.
Right. Same with Quicksilver, too. Like, Pietro's never called Quicksilver in Age of Ultron either. And I don't think they had the rights to use the characters by their real names, but I don't think they had the likeness rights. Well, they had the likeness rights, but they didn't have the rights to actual Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. And then they've just run with it since then.
Yeah, so it was a little funny nod joke that they put in there. And like you even said about with the Evan Peters now being Pietro in this, it's not mostly that it's that's the X-Men or the Foxes, Quicksilver. It's just more of just like a little joke and nudge towards everybody else, like, hey,
it's a wink and a nod.
Look, recasted. Yeah,
for sure.
A little nudge, wink, wink.
Now, if like Fassbender or something comes back at the end, like, then we may have a little bit of a bridge there, but I doubt anything like that happens yet. So.
But cannot wait until next week. I mean, we only have 3 episodes left of WandaVision. So please tell us your thoughts, your conspiracy theories. Let us know. We want to hear from everybody because we know everybody else has to be watching the show. And remember, watch it week to week. Don't binge it. Enjoy it. Relax it. Let that palpable anticipation build, and then feast on it when you get the goodness of each episode.
Drink it in. Next week and drink it in like an elixir, people. Just suck it up.
It always goes down smooth. On that note, we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoyed the show.
And today's episode was brought to you by the letters L and S for like, subscribe, and share. This program was made possible with contributions from viewers like you.